allowed us to be back here. So we give him thanks. And as we read this now, we're coming down to the last days. You see that many things are happening. The violence has somehow gone up a notch. But Virgin, and they say when we see these things, we have to look up for our redemption right now. So we have to hold on to it more than ever now than before. Alright, we're now at lesson number 11. Title is Prayer Prerequisite. Alright, I trust that the scripture reading was done. And the introduction was read, right? Introduction was read. Alright, at this time, let me just have a volunteer that will read the introduction for me. Lesson number 11. We're on page 36. So let me just have a volunteer to read the introduction for me. By volunteering, okay.
Introduction to lesson 11, prayer prerequisite. Introduction. Evangelism requires constant, earnest prayer, as does discipleship. In our key verse, Jesus deliberately sent the multitude away so he could have focused private time in prayer before he continued with his ministry. Jesus needed to be refilled after spending so much energy investing in prayer, and he needed fresh direction and strength from his Father. Prayer, in fact, was Jesus' constant companion as he preached the kingdom. Acts 1 depicts the same process of prayer before engaging in the ministry of evangelism. The 120 in the upper room continued with one accord in prayer and supplication before God sent his Spirit on the day of Pentecost. After the disciples prayed, they were filled with understanding and courage. In that power, they performed the work of evangelism, preaching the gospel of Christ, and turned the world upside down as a result. In the same way, prayer is a prerequisite to making disciples. Jesus spent an entire night in prayer before choosing the 12 men who would join him in his kingdom ministry. Picking disciples was obviously not random, but international. Those men would follow him in fulfilling the Great Commission. What the disciples accomplished as a result of that mountaintop experience was miraculous because prayer was a prerequisite for the Great Commission. The disciples came to Jesus on the mountain where they worshipped him. They first bowed to the one to whom the Father had given all authority in heaven and on earth, and then who received his commission. In the same way, our discipleship is founded upon and oriented in our prayer to King Jesus. Jesus' disciples followed their master's example of praying before performing ministry. Acts 6:4 says that they gave themselves continually to prayer. They chose 7 men to serve as deacons of the church. This is a trait of Luke's writing. Of all the writers of the Bible, no one writes about prayer more than Luke. In his Gospel and Acts, he records the Christ-centered discipleship and evangelism of the Messiah and his church. Luke's underlying message is that success of the early believers was a result of their commitment to prayer. How is this so? because prayer brings us into communion with God. It allows us to focus on Him and His will, on earth as it is in heaven. Prayer helps us hear the guiding voice of the Spirit. The New Testament features many instances in which the Holy Spirit, through prayer, led Jesus and the apostles to minister where and when God wanted. We must follow this example. The Church of God desires to be a growing and vibrant church. We are and will be as we follow the scriptural example of continuous, intentional prayer to our Creator and Redeemer.
Praise the Lord. Thanks, Sister Dorothy Brown, for ably reading the introduction for us. And our memory text is, that was read already, but we'll go by together after 2. 1, 2. Immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent them away, he departed to the mountain to pray. Alright, so this is recounting what transpired with Jesus. Alright, is there anything that jumps out at anyone that they wish to speak to from the introduction? I think it's fitting though. I remember the last class that we had, Brother Cedar was saying that it is indeed important. We have mentioned many different aspects to evangelism and discipleship, but Brother Cedar was saying that one of the important things is prayer. And here it is that we have this lesson coming right here. So we see the Spirit is moving along a certain line. Amen? Amen. So, anything at all? So interesting. It says prayer prerequisite. So what is a prerequisite? We have to break the words up into syllables. So pre means before, yes? That is essential. So it's something that is something essential that's required before the prayer. Or the prayer is the essential thing that comes before evangelism or discipleship, right? We could put it that way. So prayer is the prerequisite. Yeah. Because then, you could be funny, you could look at that and say, is that prerequisite for the prayer? It says prayer prerequisite. So you could say that, but then it's really saying to us that prayer is the prerequisite. It is the requirement. It is the essential thing that we need. And then the next question would be, it's essential thing that you need before what? And it's not the prayer, but before the evangelism and the discipleship. Right? Yes, I know we're not many numbers, but the few persons that are here, we're going to have to step it up a notch. Right? So the few people that are here, we're going to have to carry the load for everybody else. Yeah, that's what it is. It's good. Alright, so the previous lesson that we did focused on evangelism and discipleship. So now this lesson is saying that in addition to those, we need to have prayer. And the memory text spoke about that fact that one of the things that's needed for prayer is quiet time. Quiet time, right? Alright, let's go into questions of study and discussion. Question 1 says to us, how much time do you spend in personal prayer? And then it says, how much time do you spend in corporate prayer? So let's look at it first. How much time does each of us spend in personal prayer? Alright, Brother Brown, I see you ready to answer.
No, I think
ready to answer.
I can say something still.
That's good, I respect that.
Because, for instance, prayer be something long. It don't must be. In your walking, in your driving, in everything you do, and you get up and say, Lord, thank God for this day. Lord, thank God for my ride from home to work and bring me back. Every little thing that you say in that sense, let me call it prayer. So you don't have to be long. Just say something to God while you do your daily routine.
Right. Well said. Thank you very much. Yes, Doc.
Good morning, class. And I do agree with Brother Brown, because you don't have to have this everlasting prayer to speak to God and know that He will answer. Because if we look on the Lord's Prayer, it's not one whole page in the Bible, not one whole chapter, right? So honestly, even as a prayer team member, I honestly don't see the reason why we should, if we are supplicating then, that's, I think we should go a little longer. But prayer does not have to go way down the line, because even if we model ourselves of the Lord's Prayer, that's not it. And this crying out to God and talking repetition over and over and over again, you know, I don't see the reason why we should go that length. And as the question was asked, how much long, what time we spent in prayer? Sometimes I spend 15 minutes, sometimes 20, sometimes less, sometimes more. It all depends on the things that I'm praying for and the depth that I want it to go. So sometimes it all depends on the depth that you want it to go in prayer.
Quite interesting. It's I think prayer is such an interesting topic, you know. And to be honest with you, sometimes I have a problem with prayer. It's like sometimes I didn't grow up in the church like most of you did. And sometimes when I go to prayer, I'm like saying in my mind, if I'm praying to God, right? But then I come up and like you said, oh, Brother Clarke, praying for lessons on the other side. I said, it's like I'm conflicted. Like I'm saying, God knows everything. So you would know what exactly is it. But, you know, I'm just, this is such an interesting topic for me personally, right? But Don and Brother Brown highlighted that it shouldn't be a long prayer, but then if somebody comes up here, they ask them to pray for the lesson study and say, oh Lord, please help the person that is going to give the lesson study. Amen.
No.
It wouldn't work, no. Why? You guys just said that. You guys just said that prayer shouldn't be long. So then if you say it's not supposed to be long, then how long should it be? So it's an interesting topic. Alright, I don't want to focus on it. I was just saying something. I don't want to open that can of worms. I am just saying something to you guys about something that you said, and I'm reiterating the words that you guys just said. That's a corporate prayer. It's a personal prayer. Corporate prayer is prayer that's in this setting. It's not much different. Anyway, the second part says to us, how much time do you think should be spent in corporate? And from you guys, I'm getting that it should be more. If corporate should be more, or personal should be more? Personal should be more, and corporate should be mindful of the persons that are within the setting. Tell me.
Morning class. I'm just thinking as in Thessalonica where it says that we should pray without ceasing, and as Brother Brown rightly said that really and truly a prayer is basically a communication with God. And sometimes you just find yourself always just communicating with God, and it's not, dear Jesus, heaven of something. I'm just saying. You know, you're not, it's not like you're addressing it in a big, elaborate way or whatever. But still, yet it is a prayer. You know, you said, Lord, you know, you see the situation. Who must do? You know, I'm going through this. I don't know what to do. You can just show me what to do or say something. That's a prayer.
Yes,
you
yes.
know? So I think we should always be praying. You know, our thoughts should always be on God. And it should be a prayer. It should be a communication. And then we also listen for the response and hear what God would want us to, you know, where He would want us to go. So I think it should always be something that we practice, especially where it comes down to making disciples. Because sometimes even somebody come to us and ask us something. People have begged me before, and the first thing I'm like, Lord, what must I do? Should I give this person this money? How should I approach the situation? I want wisdom to know what to do. So it should always be a prayer, you know, in our life, just constantly speaking to God. You have to be elaborate, but speak to God. He will reply.
All right, well, let me just give you the second part now and come to you. So the second part is saying to us, do you think more time should be made for both, and that the church's efforts in evangelism and discipleship would benefit? So do you think that we should spend more time? So the first part asked us how much time is normally spent, and the second part is saying, do you think more time should be made for both, and that the church's efforts in evangelism and discipleship would benefit? So do we think that more time should be made for both? And do you think that as a result of making more time for both, the church's efforts in evangelism and discipleship will benefit? Do we think that?
Yes.
Yeah. Why?
When we used to have prayer meeting here, then whenever I used to see any great result, but for me especially, it used to help me a long way, you know? And I don't see myself doing that again. We don't have any more prayer meetings and all of that. And we need to reinstitute that again. Not only the prayer team members, but every single member of the church is supposed to come together. And we're supposed to have some time where we can pray together. And, you know, someone said that prayer is not about just communing with God. It's about listening to God also. Because I always ask myself the question, do I really want to hear the answer from God when I'm talking to Him? Because, you know, sometimes we really pray, but are we really listening for the answer, or do we want the type of answer that God has to give us? Because I remember I was in a certain situation, and I was praying, talking to God, and I was saying, Lord, you know that the answer that I want, I don't believe that you're going to give it to me.
Interesting.
Because what I want maybe not aligning with your will. So I'm asking you, please, just to give me the strength to whatever you deem, whatever is your will. Let me just make up my mind and say, yes, this is your will, and go along with it. Because sometimes when we pray and ask God for certain things, you know, we don't really want an answer that God is going to give us, you know, right? And many times when we pray with the things that we say to God, do we really want to hear about the answer from Him? Because it's a conversation, you know. We don't just talk and He doesn't answer, He does answers.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, God. All right, let me hear you, Sister Mildred.
Yes, praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
Yes, I do agree. So do you think more time could be made for both, that the church effort in evangelism and discipleship would benefit? And I would say yes. I'm a person, I always pray, especially when I'm going out on the road. I pray, I ask the Lord for guidance and for protection. And I remember this incident on Wednesday. I was heading home, and right at the free zone there, you know, right there, it's a 3-lane, and I was in the middle. I was in the middle lane, and there was this trailer. He was at the left, and I'm telling you, Bridget, he just turned. He was going over to the wall, and he just cut cross. He was going to the left, and he just cut cross, and I was in the middle. And I just see where I could just run right under that trailer. And all I have to say was, thank you, Jesus. Amen. Because, you know, I always pray for guidance and protection. And prayer really, really helped. Because maybe if I didn't seek Him before I go to the road, you know, I wouldn't be standing in church this morning. Because the way all that trailer cut across the road, I would just run right underneath. And I'm here this morning to say thank you, Lord, for delivering me one more time.
Amen. Thank you, Sister Mildred. I will give the Lord thanks for you that you spent the life as well. Just want to say a special greeting to the persons who are viewing online. Winston Moore, Keisha Robinson, and DJ KC. Welcome to you. Kitacho Kishiwada writes, prayer doesn't have to be loud because God sees and knows our needs even before we ask. But we must spend time in prayer and God will reveal it. He will reveal it. But we must spend time in prayer. God will reveal it openly. So that's Kitacho Kishiwada who's viewing online. And Charmaine Walker, we say happy Sabbath to you as well. Welcome to all of those who are viewing online. Braeton, you were saying?
Yes. I'm just saying that I don't think we should only pray when we need something from God. And it's that we realize, some of us, it's when we need, we pray. But I believe we should never just pray when we need something and ask God for something. We should just always pray and thank Him for what He has done already.
Yes. Thank you very much, Brother. Very well said. And that ties into what Sister Lennon was saying. So constantly praying, not only when we need things. So the second part of question one was really asking us in this praying, and praying specifically for evangelism and discipleship would benefit by us praying more. And Sister Murray Larner said that she believes that it will, and it has worked in the past, so we need to go back to that model. Amen? Yeah. All right, question 2. It says, discuss prayer as a prerequisite to evangelism and discipleship as modeled by Jesus and the early church. So looking at what Jesus and the early church did, it's saying, let's look at this prayer as a essential component before we evangelize and try to disciple persons. You know, I had a funny situation there. And we need a prayer. We need a prayer, especially for discipleship. You know, discipleship is really making other persons walk along the same path, basically, as well. I remember I was saying to myself, I don't even know what to tell a young person right now. You can, because young people are so bombarded on all sides by so many distractions. And sometimes you just have to pray. You have to pray for the words to say, you have to pray for how to say it to the person. There's so many different things. You can say one thing to a person and then when you realize the person starts from a church. You understand? It's like I was seeing last week I was seeing someone in church and had a little baby and the child had the cheese sticks. And I was saying, God, just give the patience, God have to go over and tell you, they're not supposed to be eating in church. But I was saying, the cheese stick will turn over. I'm missing the church. And we're online. Everybody will see. And I said, gee Lord, I don't even know what to do. I said, just leave it to God. Leave it to God. God will do it. But sure enough, the cheese stick will turn over. But we just pray. I'll pray to God for everything, right? And God will take us through it. Right? So this part is saying, discuss prayer as a prerequisite to evangelism and discipleship, as modeled by Jesus and the early church. All right, let's read Luke 6, verses 12 to 16. Luke 6, verses 12 to 16, and Acts 1, verse 14. So let's do Luke 6, 12 to 16 first. And let's see what was happening there. Luke 6, 12 to 16. And we're looking at the example that Jesus laid out. Who's reading? Let us have a reader for that. All right. We have the deaconess.
Luke 6, 12 to 16. And it came to pass in those days that he went out into a mountain to pray, and continued all night in prayer to God. And when it was day, he called unto him his disciples, and of them he chose 12, whom also he named apostles. Simon, whom he also named Peter, and Andrew his brother, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon called Zelotes, and Judas the brother of James, and Judas Iscariot, which also was the traitor.
Yes, yes. So, what happened here? We see that he went to the mountain to pray and continued all night in prayer to God. Right? And then afterwards, he made a decision. Was this any kind of decision? Was that a simple decision? I could have named anybody. Okay. Anybody could.
I asked the question, why did Jesus pray? Because did Jesus really need to pray? But this example is an example for me that whatever this decision that you're making in life, you need to pray about it before you decide. I mean, obviously Jesus didn't need it to pray, but I mean, in his humanity, he came on earth for a purpose, and he had a eternal relationship with God, and therefore, him in his humanity, he was constant in prayer, constant in communication with his heavenly Father. And as such, I now realize that whatever situation we are in, we must pray about everything. Even if we know that we are going to go downtown, we should pray before whatever situation, how simple or difficult it is. And also in the early church, I think in the upper room experience, they were on one accord and they were obedient to stay there and they prayed. And we know that after they prayed, they gained wisdom, knowledge, and persons were added to the church. So we see here, and I see here that prayer is very important.
Right. And you see that's not pretty. Yes, Sister Roger.
To add to what Sister Lisa said, because we are most called together. I think about Jesus when he was on earth, that he was somebody like us. Otherwise, he was divine. You know, and I think about it and I said, Jesus knew nothing without his Father. Everything Jesus put through his daddy. And I look at, before he chose the 12, he went and he spent a whole night. While he sent them out to over the sea, he went all this day by himself and he prayed all night. And the following morning when he came back, he chose the 12. And I said, he didn't have to do that, but he had a personal contact with his Father. Yeah. And I think of the same disciples after Jesus left.
Yes. And
even when they were chosen, the two, to make up the 12, they didn't depend on self. They see God to choose to choose which of them out of the two. And I said, this is really an example for us to follow. We should do nothing without seeking God's intervention.
Right. Yes, Sister Emily.
I just want to highlight here something and to get your clarification because I'm a little bit confused. We notice here in Luke chapter 6 there, and verse 12, where it says that, and it came to pass in those days that he went out into the mountain to pray and continued all night in prayer to God. I'm wondering if this was not too long for Jesus to pray. We prayed all night. You know, because based on the answers that were given to the first question, that prayer is not a long thing that we should be saying to God.
Right.
And since Jesus is our perfect example,
right.
So I wonder why we should pray long then if Jesus prayed all night, which I think that was very long.
Yes.
And we are not supposed to be praying long.
No, I understand.
Right? No. Yeah, prayer is too long. We say that some of us pray too long.
Yeah.
Oh, what I'm looking at, teacher, is that the first question we really asked how much time do you spend in personal prayer? And how much time do you spend in corporate prayer?
Right.
And I'm looking at the phrase time as a respect to what is it? How long or how many times? Time in respect of length or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How should we evaluate that time? How much time?
Right.
That is what I really want to get an understanding of, or what the writer is really
Right. So
trying
what question 2 was really getting asked, which is stemming from question 1, is that if you are a weighty decision, so that's why I was asking, if the decision is weighty, as in this one was very crucial, in that disciples were to be chosen as, hold on, just give me a second. So it's important that, depending, so the first question said personal and it said corporate, so it's showing you different scenarios. And we said that if it's personal, it's going to be long, the corporate is going to be a certain way. So it's showing you on different occasions, different things will be required. And Jesus here had a definite situation that was different. It's a weighty decision that had to be made. So obviously, all night was the duration because of the length of the magnitude of ensuring that the right persons were selected. So I'm thinking that if it's different, depending on the situation, then the prayer is going to be probably pretty lengthy. Because this is no ordinary decision. It's a special prayer. You understand? To give special prayer to choose the right person, special prayer to put you at the right place, and how to go about it, and different things. And sometimes you have to seek the Lord on light for certain situations. So it's dependent on the situation. There's no right amount of time. You can't say half an hour, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. If we're seeking the Lord, we have to wait until we hear an answer. And as we go into this, we'll see that waiting is another part of the thing too. So we have to seek His face until we get that answer. So that's, I'm not sure if there's an exact time I could put to it. But,
Oh, sorry, you're going to
okay. What do you have to say? Brother,
Yes.
Graham, then you.
Teacher, what I'm trying to ask you, or ask the congregation, although that prayer was so long, and we would call it stretch out nowadays,
Yeah.
the decision that made still never right.
Why do you say that?
Never a wrong decision.
No, that's
In the case of in the case of Judas,
why you say that?
because Judas betrayed him.
Well, that is part of the guy.
No, let us be frank. Let us be frank. We're not talking about plans.
Oh,
What you're talking about, you pray complete for a thing,
yeah.
and you think the right decision will be made or is made. But it never made, so there was someone there that betrayed him.
Okay.
Right? So I'm not really talking about the plan. The plan was there and there, and God knew there was a plan. But why never stop it from happening? Alright? You understand?
Okay.
So it don't matter the length, the time, or whatever, when there is things that cannot be cured, it just won't be cured by your purpose. It have to be the will of God, yeah? Understand?
Alright.
Okay.
Alright, you take your opinion, alright?
Yeah, that opinion.
And this sense, we should say Jesus knew about Peter, who was going to betray him.
Yeah.
He knew about Judas, who going to betray him. And you see it, as far as what we read in the Bible, Jesus didn't have no defense in it. They were just normal like any disciple to him.
Yes.
It looked like he didn't carry no grudge, no hard feelings. You know, when you look into it, you just say, Jesus is really God.
Yes, yes. Alright, thanks so much. You know, there are sometimes I think that was before or after the material talk. Entertaining is such a thing, you know. When I just came to this church, because like I said, I didn't grow up in this church, I started sitting all day for church was like impossible. I can't, no way. No set of people can sit for that church all day. No day, no way, no how. And you know, I come to find that even when I sit now in church, it don't come like that. Sometimes I kind of say the day too short. No. If I don't know, because probably I'm alone. But then sometimes like the day God say, really? Serious? You don't? Yeah. But just come to church. So I'm at that position. So time is a funny thing. Time is relative, eh? Sometimes somebody will pray, but when the person is praying, it doesn't seem that long. Right? But then to somebody else who probably not into the prayer, probably some a long time. You know? So time is not relative thing, even though we say time as a relative of prayer. It's relative to the individual, relative to the who is into, relative to who you're speaking to, or to what is being said. It's just relative, eh? That's another aspect that we have to look at as well. So somebody him spending all night talking to his father, it probably didn't seem that long. To us, no, it might seem a long time. But to him, in his presence, you know, just come here, just talk. You know, you talk to a friend and time just seems to go by and talk about this. You say, no, we used to just school and we used to do this and then before you realize 3 hours pass. But you just reflect, you just talk, you just commute, eh? So sometimes like when you talk to your father, connecting, you know, time just elapses. Just say that. Alright, let me hear the points. I will still have the second scripture to read question 2.
Yes, sir. Teacher, and that's what I was coming to. I'm also trying to see if I can help shed some light on what Sister Edwards was getting at. The other scripture says in Acts 1:14, these all continued with one accord in prayer and supplication with the woman and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brethren. And Luke was speaking to me on a personal thing. While in Acts, this was a corporate prayer. And time, as Sister Edwards was asking, it might be, this could be, we could classify in Acts a prayer meeting or something that would have had an extended period. So it's not just probably an hour because the woman continued. That means from one thing to another prayer to another prayer. You know, it was continued, and it was the same that was said in Luke that Christ continued all night. Yeah. You know? So I'm just looking at the whole thing. This is situational, and it is, even if you might pray the frequency in terms of how often you're praying through the night or how often you're praying, the time is still important. It's spending that quality communication with God. And it should, as I reiterated, according to Thessalonians, we should never cease praying. So we should just never stop praying. So whether we're going to do it back to back to back to back as a thought, or we should never stop praying. We should always be praying. We should always have something to communicate with God. There are so many things that are happening, and as was said, if we are going to make disciples, if we are going to be true evangelists, then we have to always see God's intervention in what we are doing. Because on our own we can't do it. It has to be led by the Spirit of God. So I don't think we should ever be thinking that, okay, we'll pray this morning and that's it. No more communication with God till the next morning. No, we should always be praying, always be communicating with God.
And this thing, when you look at Acts 1 verse 14, Mr. Stability, this would have been some time ago, because I got a promise from Acts 1 verse 4, okay? Because Jesus commanded them that they should not depart from Jerusalem, but wait for the promise of the Father, which said, Ye have heard of me, for truly God baptized with water, but ye shall be baptized with the Holy Ghost not many days hence. Right? So that was from there. And then they were praying for strength and so on in 14. They didn't get started until chapter 2. So time was interesting because this was a couple of days, eh? And this would have been probably about 72 hours. So a couple of days is not all night. It's more than that, but they were waiting, they were praying. So it was, sometimes the time would pass, but you're seeking your answer, you're seeking comfort, you're seeking to be empowered. Because that's what the lesson is really, it's about praying to get the necessary wherewithal to evangelize and to form make disciples. That's what the prayer, the text is speaking to. Prayer prerequisite. So you're praying to get the necessary ammunition so you can evangelize properly, so you can make disciples properly, the way God intended. Amen? Yeah. So Acts 1 verse 14 is there, and it said they continued in one accord in prayer and supplication. Right? So it's there. So the question is saying, how does it shape our own prayer life? What we see is example. What do we get from this? We see that they continued, the promise was made and they continued praying. They continued seeking the Lord. What example is this God showing us? That when we pray, we should get the answer immediately. That's what he's saying to us. And last week's lesson was very good. Last week's lesson dealt with importunity. And that was, it speaks to persistence in prayer. Right? And I was listening to something so interesting in the week. I was listening to Dr. Miles Monroe. He was saying, you have not because you asked, I'm not sure if that's the scripture, but the whole thing was that he was saying, sometimes we have some problems in our lives. I would ask God for some ridiculous things, and God gives it to us. It's like we're struggling with the rent. I would ask God to help us pay the rent instead of asking God for a new house. That you don't have to pay rent. So he said, you ask God and God gives it to you, but you don't ask Him properly. You ask Him for the wrong thing. He said the car is giving you problems and you keep asking Him to fix the old car. Lord, make the old car reach a church. Make it reach a church. Make it reach a church. Make it run out of gas. Make it run out. Yeah. Instead of saying, God, give me a new car. Where I don't have to go through these things. So it's so how does God these examples? Because these people were promised something and they believed, they trusted. They believed and they trusted and kept praying. And this thing was not immediately seen. Right? But they were in one accord, they were in one mind, and they were waiting on what was promised. So what is the impact of our prayer life? Yes, brother. Just wait for it. It will just wait for it till it comes. Till the true time. Yeah, just wait on God when you ask till the right time. Yeah. That's it, because I OG made an important point. Sometimes I pray and but on the surface it looks like it never worked out. You know, I was going to work the other day. I was driving to work, right? When I was driving to work, I looked on the other side of the road and I saw a whole bunch of traffic, you know. But I prayed before. I said, boy, God help me to reach work safe and stuff. And when I looked on the side of the road, I saw a whole heap of traffic, right? Lots of traffic, you know, at Christmas time. So traffic just come from everywhere. I don't know if they make the car or something just put up on the road for Christmas. But a whole heap of traffic. I said, jeez, I said, wow, I'm so thankful, oh God, that I'm not on that side of the road going to work, because that side is full of traffic, you know? And then something I might just come to it, check if you have your wallet. Sure enough, I followed the Spirit, and sure enough, I didn't have my wallet. So that meant I had to turn back and go home. I ended up on that side of the road, but I had to move my traffic. So, but God is awesome, because the prayer was being answered, because I just went back home But it's probably something that was on the way that God saved me from. So that's why I had to turn back. So sometimes you pray, but it seems in your mind that is not how it should be. The answer not really, that's not the answer I wanted, God. You understand? But it is God working. It's God working. You just can't see it. You can't comprehend it. So sometimes we pray, the answer doesn't come right away. Right? It doesn't come the way we want it to come. But God is answering it. And you will understand. You will understand one day. Not no. So sometimes like that, it might not be how you want it, when you want it. Right? But he's working something out for you. Right? So that's it. So this is saying how look at Jesus' example in Luke 6:12-16 and Acts 1:14. And this should shape our prayer life. So we say patience, we have to wait. We have to ask for the right things. Right? These people were promised something and they were asking for strength. They were asking, I can just bet that as the time passed by, you have 2 people in the crowd. Even in every crowd, God promises something. I know every little thing, you have some little people that say, you sure said that you're here? Sometimes, in a little setting like even this, God tells us, why go there upper room, go and wait, right? Go and wait until you receive the Holy Spirit. And you must say 2 little voices I was saying. You sure he said that he say, I saw himself there? After 2 days pass, you sure he say, yes, I'll come, I'm not still up and go on yet. So that's why you have to be praying. You have to be praying to get them voices out of your head, if it's you speaking, or get them voices in alignment with what the promise said. You understand? This is it. It's just like a real lesson that's serious. Even we evangelize and do the necessary discipleship. You have persons that say, well, we forgot the prayer meeting today again. I wonder if I would have tea for. No, I don't know. Not this church, but probably other churches. Yes, Sister Murray.
I want to be short. But something happened over the week that I was thinking about. I read the newspaper and where they were talking about the trial where the men cut off the mother and daughter head. And yes. Yeah, the trial. And this lady was saying that when the mother get the news that she used to leave the place, leave her own because they're going to kill her and her daughter, she said she's not leaving. And the daughter was saying the whole night the mother was in the house praising God because she was an evangelist. She was praising God. Yet the other night the men come, shot them, stabbed them, cut off them head. And the lady was saying in the media that the observer that she was asking, I think it was her cousin, the deceased cousin said that she was asking the question, where was God in all of this? And she was saying, in spite of everything, wicked men crucified Jesus. So as Brother Graham was saying, Jesus prayed all night, yet there was one who betrayed him. And this teaches me that whatever I pray to God and ask him for, sometimes if it is his will, whether it be disappointment or not, I have to go by his will. Yes, because this lady whose head was chopped off, she was an evangelist. Yeah. She was praising God and praying to God and said she's not leaving there. If it is her time, then it's her time. And it happened, the men come in and they kill her. Yeah. Right? So sometimes it's not all the while we're going to get our will. If it is God's will that we were dead, then we have to take it. Because it was God's will that Jesus was betrayed by Judas. And he prayed all night. So even though, because in the scripture tells us that in the last days, terrible times shall come, all of this will happen. So it does not negate the fact that we have to pray all night. When we are supposed to continue with our prayer meeting the same way, even though we know that things may not work out the way we prayed for. So I suggest that we go back to the all-night prayer meeting that we used to have, and whether things work out, yes or no, we are still to pray. Amen?
Amen. Well said. All right. So it should, yeah, and that will help shape our prayer life, as we say. All right, Luke 3, I have to move on. Luke opens his gospel in Luke 1, verse 10, and closes Acts 28, verse 8, with references to prayer. We don't have 50 other instances of prayer in between. So the capacity to discuss how it pertains to you, to evangelism, and to discipleship. So let us look at Luke 1 verse 10. It's a lot of reading. But select a passage, any passage, and says how it pertains to prayer and discipleship, evangelism. Or our favorite verse. Now we can look at what we did last week, which is the Lord's Prayer, when Jesus teaches us about prayer. We have a read for it. So it's chapter 11, Luke 11, verse 1 to 4. And meanwhile, I want to come to Telly on Sherrington, Dennis Cruikshank, and Esther Elliott, who are viewing online. Special welcome to all of you. Happy Sabbath. So let me have a read of that. Luke 11, verse 1 to 4, which is the Lord's Prayer.
When he sees one of the disciples said unto him, Lord, teach us to pray, as John also taught his disciples. And he said unto them, when he prays, say, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done as it is in heaven, so in earth. Give us day by day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, for we also give everyone that is in debt to us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Right. You know, last week when we were doing this, we did this part of the scripture last week. I said, sometimes we have disciples, like you're making disciples. It's like, persons think that it would be like, you must be instructing the person, like I said, this way you must go as a Christian, today was day one, you must do this and that and that. But sometimes it's a life you live. Because here it was that they were moving with Jesus. And Jesus never directly said to them, say, we're teaching about prayer now. But they felt driven or inspired enough to ask him. You know, because they saw him pray. They saw him praying on a couple of occasions. So and then here say when John's disciples know to pray. So they felt a need, and they felt that he had the necessary stuff. So it is that what this is showing is like sometimes it's the life you live and the way you move. More than even what you say. It's like persons will look on you and they'll be inspired or motivated by your lifestyle. So they will want to be like you. So that's why I'm seeing jumping out here as far as discipleship is. It's not really taking a person aside and even showing them, but they just feel a drive or urge by how you are living to want to be a part of whatever you are doing. You know? So that's what I'm getting from that. What else are you getting from this part of the scripture? As it relates to evangelism and discipleship. Now, how does it pertain to you?
I'm looking at the example that Christ did in John 17, right before he was crucified, and while he was with his disciples, basically in John 17 you can see that he prayed for himself, Jesus prayed for himself. That is unheard of. It's like, as was said, he, the Almighty, is praying for himself. He really didn't have to, but he was showing us and leaving an example for what we are supposed to do, in times of difficulty. He also prayed for his disciples. and a particular verse that jumped out at me was verse 15 of John 17. I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world, but that thou shouldest keep them from the evil. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. You know, so he knew that they were going to have a hard time and difficulty. He knew that they would have been martyred for his sake. And he also prayed for them so that they would have added strength. And in the latter part of John 17, Jesus prayed for the believers. And that would have included us who were not yet at that time, but have now been, you know, a part of the whole family of God. He saw the future. And it is for us, brethren, I don't know if I sound like a stop record, but don't stop praying. You know, even when you are oppressed, even when you feel as though the prayer is not being heard, don't stop praying, because Christ prayed for us. And here we are as his disciples to pray for someone else, to make them into the kingdom of God.
Yes, well said, well said. And verse, we're speaking about importunity. And verse 9 says, And I say unto you, ask and it shall be given unto you, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receive it, and he that seeketh find it. And to him that knocketh it shall be opened. And if a son shall ask bread of any of you that is his father, will he give him a stone? Or if he asks a fish, will he for a fish give him a serpent? Or if he shall ask an egg, will he offer him a scorpion? If ye then be evil, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your heavenly Father give the Holy Spirit to them that ask him? So it's jumps out. I mean, you know, that we have to, as Sister Lennon said, to keep asking. Even when we don't seek, not. We have to be persistent. But sometimes we might have children, you know, that are not in the church, are not really want to have this to be spiritually. I would just pray it one prayer and say, Lord, just leave it up to you, you know. So we take it to the Lord because we can't deal with this thing. You understand? We'll just basically give up. But this is saying to us, we have to keep pressing, we have to keep praying, you know. And that's what that relates to evangelism as well. And discipleship. Alright, question 4. In essence, the time we have to move on. Work together and create a list of reasons we're so distracted from praying as we should. And how can we prepare to be more continuous in prayer? Because sometimes you're trying to pray, and every distraction won't mind. Every distraction won't mind. Everything that can be a problem come by that particular time. Right? So where do these things come from? You're trying to pray at everything, you know? I can't say you're trying to pray now, I have something about the plane or something. You know, I think about the plane, what would that come in the talk right now? Right? You know, something about work and you have to do this more work and some kind of thing that come up right now. But I mean, prayer time, that time to focus or devotion or whatever it is. You know? It's like typically Sabbath when I was supposed to have devotion. Everything known, everything go. Baby back to back. That fear. You have closing them on my lamp sleeping there. I said, I'm biting. So, whatever different thing that come up, right? You want juice in the bottom. Right? So what are the, you know, we have to think, what are the things that distract us from praying as we should? Time. It was mentioned earlier, Sister Emma was mentioned. Time. However, time problem, this generation have a time problem. Don't know about back in the day, but we have a time problem now. There's never enough time. You understand? And we have to make time for some important some other things though. I remember a pastor was saying that we make time for some, we go on one job we don't like, and we like we'll spend like probably 14 hours there. Right, getting ready for it, leaving it, and all type of thing, but if God said, boy, just pray for half an hour or so. You know, that much time, man. Yes, just doing one thing like that. Right? So why we should distract it from praying as we should, and how can we prepare to be more continuous in prayer? What is prayer though? Along this particular line. To me, personally, I pray because there's so much things I don't know and I can't. It's like sometimes I'm at work and I pray continuously because people come to me, like as a manager, and I don't know the answer to the question. Like, even now, I do not know. But then I can't because of the question I have to know it. I have to kind of guide them along a particular line. So I have to pray right away. I have to pray constantly because there's so many different situations that come from me that I really don't know the answer. I don't know. You understand? But it says His strength is made perfect in my weakness. So I have to be praying constantly. What should I do? How should I go about this? What is the impact this will have? And like sometimes I even get so upset. Like I remember a co-worker did something and he wrote an email and I was so upset at the same time I started writing up. I was saying, this guy must be crazy. He reports to me, I mean, like, why would you be writing email like this? I probably want to do some work. And I'm writing email fast. Because I said, Chapo, this guy, oh my, this guy's getting off. I don't think you understand the position at all. He must be losing it. Imagine that. Oh, imagine he reports to me and he writes an email like this to me, and like, this is something my boss will see. You must be crazy. Writing email, someone write 5 paragraphs, pick it up. No one was going to type that fast. Right, so come say, I'm going to say this, and I will copy HR too, because you need to get sorted out properly. You don't understand yourself. I'm writing. And then the boy said to me, just relax, don't send anything yet, because there might be another side to this story. You understand? That's why I said that. And you know what I said? Alright, cool. If you say so, you know, so we can speak. I so happy that, you know, days pass and I still don't send an email, you know? Come here and say, well, alright, I'm listen to the voice and so. And when I look back now, if I had sent an email now to the guy, probably that would break the guy's spirit. Because the guy is really the one who drive the sales target and say, boy, come chief, you can do this, you can send the art, you can tell the people so you can do this. And for me, the sales target, he was really the one who was instrumental in it. And people thought him playing the role to really do all the necessary things to make us spend the target. If I send that mail to him now, you know, break the man's spirit, cut the man's spirit to nothing, probably wouldn't make any target. You know, but sometimes just the talking to God or listening to Him or whatever, and it's those things that come to you because you don't have all the answers. And the reality is here. So even evangelizing and discipleship, we don't have the answers. And sometimes as men too, as men especially, we go on like we know. Kind of man of faith. You know, I see women not understanding. But for the guys who are here, the man go on like, we have to know everything, eh? We have to know, say, oh, I have that and one. You know? And thing we have to know. But that's what prayer is about. It's speaking to God and saying, boy, God, I really don't understand this. I don't know what I should do here. You know? And waiting for an answer. That's how it is. Huh? Yeah, man, but it was Him that gave it to me. I was praying for it before. It does not come at the same time. Like I'm praying constantly to give me the guidance I see, and He gives it to me. So it's all the time praying. At the time, before the time, all the time. Okay. So it's constant, right? Yeah. But it's saying to us, why are we so distracted from praying as we should? And how can we prepare to be more continuous in prayer? And I was saying, the example I want to use really that to be more continuous, we have to not see it as really even our duty, but it's just like our friend you talk to our friend that you're talking to, that's there to guide you. So a constant thing, but it's just our friend we're speaking to get the necessary thing to be continuous in prayer. It has to be a habit. You know, when you your feedback, why do we have so much distractions? I can speak and say my issues and stuff, but why from you? What are the things that distract you, and how can we get over those things? Because Don said it earlier, we have evangelizing that needs to be done and stuff. The prayer meetings need to go on. Why we have a challenge? What is the biggest challenge that we have? Getting to that place where we know we should be. Because we can't just go there and evangelize on our own and make disciples on our own. We realize that. We have to understand that, because if we try to do that, we will fail. Right? What is it that's preventing us? And how can we overcome these obstacles?
Sometimes it's social media.
Social media is a problem, no?
Sometimes children, family.
Wait. Let me get the full count of this. Who is it a problem to? The social media is a problem, it's blocking you.
Yeah.
But your children are on it. So your children being on social media is a problem, not you necessarily.
No, man, sometimes, because they're around you, they tend to be doing stuff and you always have to be attentive to them, stop doing this, stop the noise, go and do that. So sometimes just get caught up in things.
Oh, so it's two things. So you have social media taking up your time, and then at the same time you have children who they take up your time too. So it's two things, yeah. Which is a reality we have to really face, because children take up a lot of time. It's like I was talking to David this morning, and I was saying to him, I can't remember what I was saying to him. But in the space of the question, they were asking me about 5 whys. And I said, how do you get so much wise out of that question? Because like I was saying, I was explaining to you and I was saying, that's something you do. And then you say, what is something? And I said, it's like, I think you're doing now. So you say, what is now? I said, well, it's like I say, you don't know what now is? Then I said, I prepare myself, I try to know my now. Oh, I'm going to explain now to you. I like that I said, well, now is presently what we're facing right now. What's presently? So we say, it's children take one at a time, right? So I identify with her, with Sister Lisa, Sister, yeah, Hines. Yes. Sister May. So we pray by faith. I didn't get the last part. We can't pray off. We pray by faith, we pray less by self. Offset, but by faith. Yes, right. So it's good. Yeah, definitely. So that is it. So yes, God is a spirit, and he should worship in spirit and truth. So that is a big statement that she's made here. So the prayer itself has to be on that level. So faith is like the currency that they need in the spiritual world. If you don't have that faith and belief, right? It's a problem. It's a serious problem, because sometimes we pray, but we really don't believe. We don't believe that he will deliver, right? And it's about getting power. Getting the power, but believing that the power is there, but we have to kind of really tap into it. So the prayer is like an opening up. And we have to have that prayer communication. Right? So, and it requires faith. So you can't be praying half-heartedly and say, well, if you can, Lord, if it is your if, and all type of thing. We have the type of prayer there. Lord, if you could just and is that sometimes why we're not more continuous, because we don't have the faith. So we believe, say, if we pray I want to see it right away, that now will make me more continuous. You understand? That's kind of why the block is, because we have wait, because I think, you pray we're going to see it yet, so you kind of stop and say, wait, how they can hear it? Wonder now we're more continuous. You understand? So that's how it's a blockage to it. Alright, time is going. I know somebody's going to ring the bell now. How can we commit more fully to giving yourself in prayer to God? How can we commit to giving ourselves more fully to God? Guys, evangelism, is it important? Why? And why is that important? Huh? And that you're in the saying everybody's all over the place. It was the question I was asking, why are we so distracted? Even in class we're distracted. So when we're teaching adults, like when I was going to college, they said that you have to give them so much breaks. Not even children get so much breaks because the mind is all over the place. You have a break. The lecturer had to break us every 20 to 30 minutes. Mind all over the place. They call it something to do with monkey. So it brings up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's why television commercials are like that. It's not any fault. That's why people make millions and billions of dollars off the fact that our minds are like that. So every when you watch the show and the interesting part come out. And that's when your attention span has weak. So we can push a commercial in here, we can make millions of dollars, we sell the spot and then it works out. In case you don't know that, that's what our marketers make the money. So, yes, Sister.
Okay, good morning everyone. There are two words, proactive and reactive. All right, as I look now, as we are closing, this calendar year 2019, and while we are making New Year resolutions, coming up January, which is a big event in some of our slides, I guess we can put on the agenda the things to be accomplished throughout the year and continually that we increase our prayer life. Now, when I look at Jesus' example, while he was all God, he was all human as well. And reading earlier in our lesson, he has spent a lot of time in prayer. And as it was expressed earlier that, the time that he spent may be considered too long, all night. And I look back at when we have all-night prayer meeting and some of us carry our pillows because we're going to fall asleep because we can't keep up. And when I look at his example of continually praying, when he was on the cross in agony and in pain, he could have gone and cried then, brethren. He could just say, God forgive them, take this cup from me. Just a few words or a line or probably groan or something. So it was good that he spent that time in prayer. So when the real pain and agony come, then that was back up. When I spoke the two words, proactive and reactive, we ought to be proactive in that we need to dedicate time, spent in prayer. You have persons who suffer from insomnia or sleepless nights. When you wake up, don't just get up and try to find something to eat. Probably you can just, read your Bible or probably just lie there and pray. And I look at, some of us, we can't keep away from always being in trouble. Because those are the things that lead us to pray. So those are the reactive persons. Only when they're faced with situations, then, they find time to pray. But we ought to be proactive so that at those moments when you can't even say a word to God, because you have your prayer basket, full, then even a groan will be okay. So let us not be reactive. Only when situations occur, we pray and we expect a result, but let us be proactive. Let us do it continually.
Well said. I'm getting you to close off. So we have to be proactive. Always pray. And that we have to make a commitment to be proactive. That is it. So that's a big statement we make that right there. You have to be careful. So, alright, cool. Let us hear your problem. Because a human nature thing, when somebody said about a problem, you will say everybody in the church wake up.
It says, how can you commit more fully to giving yourself in prayer? I remember before God blessed me with this job that I'm doing now, I used to be regular at prayer and fasting service. I used to be here on Tuesday nights at Bible study. But since I got this job, I don't have this privilege again. And at work, sometimes I'm there not doing anything. And by the time I said I'm going to pray, the bell start ringing. And my baby now start ringing bell until we go to a ring. We have to cut the prayer. Sometimes it's the doorbell ringing. Sometimes it's the boss calling the phone. So, you know, sometimes I have this problem. Sometimes I have to be preparing whatever I'm preparing and praying at the same time, just talking to God. Because sometimes I have to bend down to pray. I have problem. Papa start calling, or the doorbell ring, or phone ring, something, you know. So I really have been a problem.
Yes. But I said, be proactive. We have those times where we're alone, man. We have to just, as Sister Harper said, it's storm basket. We have to just, when we do get those moments, we have to just pray up and make sure that for those times when we're going to be distracted, that we would have enough to take us through. Amen? Amen? Amen. Okay. Alright, so it says we need to commit fully to giving ourselves in prayer. And it looks at different ways. And sometimes, you know, I was looking last week at the widow's mite. That story doesn't necessarily only pertain to financial stuff. Some persons do not understand certain situations. It's like, even if the Lord said that you have a lot of stuff, and you say, boy, Jesus just help me. You understand that at that time, that's all you can say. And you understand. So it might not have to be a long prayer, but in the midst of whatever situation you're facing, you understand that when you say that prayer, even though it might seem like a widow's mite, and very short and little bit, it's all we were able to do, and we appreciate it for what it is. You know? So that's it. Alright, let us read the conclusion together. After 2, are we here? So page 38, conclusion. After 2, 1, 2. To pray together and alone, because he wants to fill us with his power and will for the work ahead. Jesus wants us to undertake great endurance for today. But this call to fulfill the great commission requires and begins with prayer. The glory and success are of him and not ourselves. To believe we can do anything of eternal God without him is futile. In human ministry and literation, we must take the much faster to work with own strength and righteousness. Right, and this sums it all up. You know, it's all about him and getting his power. Alright, the application says, make a prayer adjustment/commitment and begin developing your personal lifestyle of prayer today. So it's an implication on each and every one of us to make that adjustment as needed or commit even more to enhance our lifestyle of prayer. Dennis Cruikshank, that's the last school in church said, I remember Evangelist McDermott taught us to pray and put down for the days when we can't pray. And that's from Dennis Cruikshank. Very good example and a good note to finish off. And you know, Evangelist McDermott was such an interesting man, you know, wonderful man. And Dennis Cruikshank said he told, exactly as Sister Harper was saying, taught us to pray and put down for the days when we can't pray. Amen? So let us use that as the ending note or example to carry, or takeaway to take away from this lesson. Alright, so I thank you very much. You've been an attentive class. You started out as a few people, but somehow, as time progressed, the class got more fulsome, if that's the word. So I thank you very much for your participation, and I'll ask the superintendent to return. Alright? And God's willing, we'll meet again next week.